My name's Katie Bacon. I'm a college consultant and writing specialist here at Educational Advocates. We're so glad you could join us tonight. And welcome to Sarah and Henry, our panelists. Thank you so much for participating. We really appreciate it. Sarah graduated from Hingham High and is now at Wake Forest, where she's thinking of majoring in business and minoring in history. And Henry graduated from Wellesley High, and he's now at Lehigh, majoring in business analytics and minoring in financial technology. And both of them worked with educational advocates last year when they were applying to schools, coming up with their list, doing their essays, doing all those things that juniors and seniors are so busy with when they're applying to college. And we thought they might have some advice for you. So thank you again to both of you. The way this is going to work is I'm just going to ask some questions for the first half hour or so. And then if any of you have questions for Sarah or Henry, just please put them in the chat and we'll talk about those at the end, and we'll wrap up around 7:45. So I guess the first thing I'd like to ask is, and either or both of you can answer, if you could give your younger self advice about applying to college, what would you say now that you're, a year, 9 months out?
I can answer. I feel like last year, at least, like in the beginning of the year, I remember it was like, oh, everyone was kind of like talking about college and like where they were applying and like what they wanted to do and their essays and stuff. And I feel like it was like it always like stressed me out a lot because I didn't really talk about it. So like kind of just like ignore it and just like do your own thing and like focus on your essays and like where you want to apply. I know everyone says this, but like it does all work out. So like just like try to focus on yourself and don't get like too stressed out by like everyone else around you because I feel like that really stressed me out. And I don't know, everyone goes where they're supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I kind of followed that same process as well. Just like, take your time on these things, putting in like a lot of effort and like, I guess, work that shows that you put in the effort is like really important in the application process, especially with your essay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, similar to what you said, Sarah, I always tell my students that they should really think about kind of their own privacy in the process, and whether they want to share their list with people, how much they want to talk about it. Because I think sometimes people feel like they have to, and it's really good to think about it ahead of time. And because I think it can make it a lot less stressful if you just keep it a little more private. So,
Hmm.
um, and maybe if you could tell the audience what kind of extracurricular activities you were involved in high school. Kind of what were the two or three things that were most important to you and that you really emphasized on your applications?
Yeah, so a lot of my application was about like history. Like that's kind of what my Common App was about. Um so in high school I like did my school had this thing where you could like be an intern at our local historical society. So that was like kind of my main extracurricular. And then I also had volunteered there too, so I had it as like two different ones on the Common App. And then I ran track and cross country for 4 years and I was a captain senior year for both those. So that was another like big one. And then I volunteered at this nonprofit called Girls on the Run. So that was kind of like connected to the running thing. Those are like my three main ones, I feel like.
Hmm.
Yeah, I worked as a lifeguard for the majority of like my high school career. Like I was started lifeguarding sophomore year. And that's like eventually what I wrote my Common App essay about. And I also volunteered at an animal shelter. And that kind of like that had a pretty big impact on me. I also played lacrosse and basketball in high school as well. But for just like for my major for business, I was in a club called DECA at it's actually a like a national business club, but it helps like young students who are aspire like to be in the field of business like get better at being in business. So I thought that also had a pretty big impact as well, and I included that on my Common App.
And is that what helped you? I mean, did you know you're interested in business before you did that? or did that kind of develop that interest, and then that's why you decided to apply to that major at Lehigh?
Yeah, it kind of did both. I knew beforehand that I was interested in it, and then it kind of like reinforced like why I liked business so much and like why I wanted to pursue it.
Hmm. Um, and Sarah, it sounds like you in your application, were you kind of trying to think about telling a story with your application?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like um most of my application, like I said, my Common App essay was about history, and then I feel like most of it was about like history or running, kind of.
Hmm. Hmm. So you had like two really strong themes in it.
Yeah, and I feel like it was mainly history. Like Wake, one of the um supplementals is like your top 10 list, and I know I did that about history. Like a lot of the things, like if there was a supplemental where I could connect to that too, I kind of would try to like not make the same, but like same, like weave in the same ideas.
Right, right. Um, and what were the two to three most important factors for you each when you were choosing a college? I guess when you were choosing the ultimate college that you went to.
I feel like for me, I was really focused on like size because I really like to be in like a classroom that's like smaller where you like know your teacher. It's not like a big lecture hall, and like also like kind of like what people thought of like the professors at the schools just to like see if they were like available like a lot or if it's like you were learning from a TA. So I kind of wanted like a smaller class size, but also like not like a super small school where there's like no school spirit or any sports. And I feel like Wake has like a good balance of it's like my classes right. I think my biggest class right now is probably like 30 people, and like it's still like really fun. Like we have like football games and stuff. So I think it's like a perfect balance where it's like in the classroom it's like the perfect amount, but also it's still like a really like fun atmosphere. And then yeah, I feel like those are kind of the main things.
Yeah, I mean, basically the same thing for me. Like size was kind of a priority for me. I also didn't want the school to be like too small where there was no like big school spirit or like kind of a lack of a student community as a whole. But I also wanted like an interactive like classroom experience, especially with like my smaller classes, like business analytics, interacting with the professor, working with your students kind of like as a team around you is like really important, and I feel like it translates to the business world as well. But yeah, so I feel like those factors were kind of like the main ones that I looked at when looking at colleges.
Hmm. Um, and Sarah, you mentioned wanting to know what people thought of their professors. How did you research that ahead of time?
Well, if I like knew someone at a school, I'd ask. And then a lot of times I remember on tours, they were like really like they'd always talk about like, oh, like the professors are super available and you can go to office hours. I feel like most of the schools I applied to weren't super big. And if it like was a bigger one, I didn't tour. So I feel like that was kind of like the case in honestly all the schools I applied to. Um, but I also tried to talk to people who went to the schools. And then um I didn't like know this like then, but like you can also go and like rate my professor, and like obviously that's specific to certain professors, but like I don't know, I feel like it kind of gives you an idea if you look at like a good amount of them.
Yeah. Um, and did you guys, when you went on tours, did you each tour a lot of colleges?
Um, I toured, I don't even remember. I can count. Wait 1 sec. Um,
That's okay. Just kind of general.
maybe
Yeah.
like I applied to I think like 13 schools, and I probably toured like 5 to 7, maybe five.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I did like a trip in April where I toured a bunch, I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I've toured kind of a lot of schools, probably closer to like eight or like 8 to 10. And it was also kind of spread out. Like the furthest I went though was about the Midwest, Michigan, Michigan State, Denison. But yeah.
And do you guys have any systems like when you did go visit, would you to remember what you saw? I mean, did you take notes? Did you take pictures? Because I always tell my students, do those things so because when it comes time to write your applications and your supplementals, you want to remember all those specific details. But I think sometimes it's hard to do it when you're actually there.
I feel like I just try to like listen, and then if there's anything that like stood out to me that like I could connect to in any way, then I'd like write it down or something. And
Hmm.
then I'd also just try to like, this is like kind of related to what you were saying, but not really. Like, I just try to look around, like when I was on tours, like to see what I liked. I'd like look around and like I feel like looking at the students was like the main thing, kind of when I was on campuses.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the same thing. Like kind of observing I guess like the campus in general, the classrooms you went into, the type of lectures that were being given, but also interacting with the tour guide. Like a lot of you guys will have tour guides that will have like specific majors and things like that. And like if you can find like any commonalities with them, it can really make like a difference in your experience like while touring. So.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think oftentimes they'll give you their email addresses at the end, and you could connect with them and ask more questions, ask about the major. So I think that can be a good thing to do. Um, so in terms of, before you're visiting the colleges, presumably you research the colleges to figure out which ones you wanted to visit, which ones you wanted to apply to. And what was the most helpful thing you did to learn about the colleges on your list?
I feel like touring and then like talking to people if you know people who go there, or yeah, I feel like talking to people who go there is definitely like really helpful because then you like can really get an idea of the college.
Hmm.
Yeah, same thing for me, but also utilizing the resources that like ILD gave me to kind of like see like what the campus life is like, and to see like the different types of like academics that are actually at the school.
Hmm. Um, and did your this may be hard to remember this far back, but do you remember how your list changed from whenever you started, maybe beginning of junior year to the time you applied? Did it shrink? Did the were there factors that changed, like distance from home, size of the school, what major you were interested in, cost, those sorts of things?
I feel like size probably changed for me. I think originally, like it changed both ways. Like I realized I didn't want a super small school because I think originally I was planning on applying to some more like NESCAC, like smaller schools. Oh, just turn off. Like NESCACs, like smaller schools in New England. And then also I like took some like bigger schools off my list too, I think. I think I had Wisconsin on my list and I took that off. Like I feel like I just like narrowed down like what size range I wanted a lot.
Okay. You kind of converged on the medium-sized school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar process with the size of the school. I had a pretty good amount actually of bigger schools on my list, but after touring and getting to kind of see what that feel was like, I didn't really like it that much. But also the distance from home, I had a pretty good amount of like Midwestern schools, and I just found that that would just be like kind of too far from home for me. So.
Hmm. Um, so I'd like to switch to asking about essays a little bit. A lot of our seniors now, they're just finishing up their Common App essays and they're working on their supplemental essays. Um, but from your experience, when do you recommend the students begin working on their essays?
I feel like I started like my Common App, I remember I started like all the summer. I don't remember when, but like sometime in the summer. And then I remember my earliest deadline was like October something, like early October, like 15th or something maybe. So I think I started like when school started. Also, Wake has like you I applied in like September. So I
Hmm.
worked on a lot of my essays, I think, like over the summer, honestly, but also
Okay.
kind of just throughout the fall. But I think a lot of them I did try to do over the summer.
Hmm.
Yeah, I probably like predominantly started my essays or like my main essay in spring of junior year. And just kind of like started getting the like other because there's other stuff on Common App that you have to do as well. Just kind of started doing those like a little bit after that.
Hmm. And what advice do you have for seniors who are writing their college essays now? Like, what was that process like for you guys?
Um, I feel like just like the questions are all pretty similar. Like, I don't know, they don't range that much between colleges except for like some weird applications. But like I feel like try to make them like as like personal as possible. I don't know, like I feel like the fun part of writing them is when you can like add in like a little story about yourself. Like I don't know. And I feel like that's what colleges like too, because like I don't know, like they want to know what's different about you personally, not just like the most like generic, like best sounding answer. Like I feel like it's definitely good to include like a lot of personal details, even if it's like a question that's like seems like it isn't asking that. I don't know. I just think it's always good to like kind of include like a story aspect to it a little.
Yeah. So not just in the Common App personal essay, but also in the
Yeah.
supplementals, you tried to work in details about yourself to really
Yeah.
let the college know about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have very similar advice, like including your own personality within the stories that you're showing. And I guess not being afraid to like sort of brag about yourself. Like I'm sure you'll get that advice a lot about your essays to kind of like show your achievements and things of that nature. Just to like because like colleges they do like want to see that type of stuff. They want to see like what you've achieved, what you've done. And I think it's really important just to like not be afraid of like showing like what you've achieved in your essays especially.
Hmm. But figuring out kind of a way to show it, but without
Yeah, like coming
to be
across.
confident but not bragging
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's a balance. Um, and in terms of, I guess in terms of the supplementals, but in terms of, the essays themselves, or the Common App personal essay itself, was there anything that you found especially challenging about, either part of that process?
I feel like since my Common App essay was kind of like about history, I found there was also a lot of questions to ask, like, oh, like what like piques your like interests or like what makes you like curious. So I feel like it was kind of hard sometimes because I was like, oh, well, I already wrote my whole Common App about that.
Hmm.
So I feel like sometimes there was like a little bit of overlap where I'd have to like write about something I wasn't as interested in. So I feel like that was a little hard sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was definitely the like the supplemental essays. A lot of them would be like pretty specific in regards to the questions. So like you would kind of have to do a lot of digging like for yourself about like what you would want to write about. Like why like the common questions that are like why this school or like why this major, things like that. Like you sort of like really have to think about it and make sure like what you're writing is like kind of like what your accurate beliefs are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that a lot of times students don't realize going into the process that those supplemental essays actually take really a lot of research and kind of knowing the school and understanding the school that you're applying to and why you're applying. Um, and that schools can tell if you haven't done that research. Um, so, I mean, it's definitely is, it's a lot of work to do all these supplemental essays, do the Common App essay, kind of do all the activities that you guys both were busy doing. How did you manage, with your schoolwork, your activities, how do you manage the extra workload from the application process? Do you have any tips to offer people who are going through it now or will go through it next year?
I feel like I wrote a lot of my essays on like Saturdays, like Saturday mornings.
Okay.
I never really was doing anything then. Or I remember I do them a lot. Like I don't really mind writing essays because you can like sit in your bed and do it. So I think I do it a lot like after I finish my other homework, like kind of late at night.
Yeah, for me, like it was sort of the same thing. Like whenever I found myself having like free time when I wasn't like doing sports or going to work or doing schoolwork, obviously, but just like making sure you could like focus and just kind of like work on the stuff that needs to be done because they're like there's like a pretty good amount of like prerequisites like before you do the essay as well on the Common App. So like making sure I guess you get those done as well is like pretty important.
Mm-hmm. And there are definitely some parents on here, and I'm wondering if you have any advice for parents in terms of what you think is most helpful for children, for students as they're going through the process, kind of what sort of support is helpful and what kind of support isn't helpful.
I feel like a lot of the time, like during the like college process, my mom would always be like, "Oh, you have to do this," like reminding me to do things, which like was definitely helpful, but also like to a point, like I don't know, I feel like I'm like a pretty organized person. Like I had an idea of like what I was doing. So like sometimes like I don't know, sometimes I just had like my own plan of what I was gonna do. And like her always being like, "Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that." It just like stressed me out more than like I needed because I already knew what I was gonna kind of do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess it was just more so like helping me with like certain things about like my essay. Like if I ever had like I guess like personal questions or things like that, like she would like my mom or like my dad, like for example, for like my business questions, I'd go to my dad sometimes and ask him like what do you think like the best thing to say like for some supplemental essay would be just to get like a general idea that I could go off of sometimes to write them. But yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I often suggest to my students that they discuss things over dinner with their parents. Like maybe there's an essay question they're thinking through, because a lot of times parents do have great advice, but it's nice when they give it, when you ask for it. And are there any not necessarily involving parents, but are there any pitfalls that you feel like rising juniors or seniors should avoid? Like any things that you feel like, oh, I wish I'd done that differently, or
Like maybe I don't know. I feel like it's like obviously natural to be stressed because I feel like it's such a stressful process and like I don't know. I feel like everything like about it would like just like get to me, but I don't know. Just like try not to let it like take over your life, I guess. I don't know. It's like it
Mhm,
was a long process for me, I feel like, but I don't know. I feel like in the middle of the, at least I remember at my school, like in the middle, like December, like I feel like everyone was so stressed still, and like no one really knew where they wanted to go. And then I feel like by March, it was like everyone like kind of knew where they wanted to go, and I feel like everyone kind of ended up where they wanted to go. So I guess just like it sometimes takes longer than you want it to, but like just don't let it like control, like ruin your like last year. I feel like of high school.
mhm. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, I feel like kind of a similar thing. I mean, like just don't let like if you're unsure of like where you want to go or what major you want to do in school, like don't let that kind of like ruin I guess like your final years of high school. Like have make sure that like I guess you have like the work done, but like if you're still unsure about like things like your major or like other aspects of like if you want a big school or a small school, like a lot of people are in the same boat as you, and so like just don't get that overwhelmed over it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can always, some decisions you can wait to make till later. Like you could get into a range of schools and then visit them and then decide, okay, actually I do want a big school or I want a medium-sized school. Were there ways that you guys chose to relax or manage stress?
I feel like for me, one thing that like when I just like felt like I had so much to do, like obviously like all my schoolwork and then all of my like college stuff too, just like being like, okay, this is when I'm gonna do this, like kind of just like making a plan, like I'm gonna do my essays at this time and like my schoolwork at this time, just because like then you can at least have it like sorted out in your head, kind of. And also like if you don't get everything done on time, like don't let that like don't get super upset over that because I feel like a lot of the times when I'll like build myself like a little schedule of what to do, like it's probably like a little over ambitious. So then like I wouldn't always like get everything done I needed to, but like I don't know, eventually you do. And I just feel like having like an idea of when you want to do things is definitely helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say like also just don't be too harsh on yourself. If you have like hobbies like if you like running or like doing sports or painting, writing, reading, anything like that, like I guess like don't just let it consume you. Like the college process it can be very stressful. So like finding like healthy outlets like for like either exercise or just like things you enjoy doing, like I guess like find time for that as well. It can help you like I guess like decloud your mind from all that stuff, and also like can help you like come back and focus more when you get back to work.
No, yeah, that's great advice. Um, Now this next question, it might not apply to both of your college processes, but I'm wondering how you approach the process of narrowing down your acceptances, decide where you wanted to go, kind of who or what did you turn to for input when you were kind of comparing different schools?
I D2 so I knew like when I eventually got in that I really wanted to go here. But before that, when I didn't know, because I got deferred, so I like got all my other things back first. I like obviously was like thinking about like where I'd want to go if I don't eventually get into Wake. So I feel like for that, I just kind of based it off like what school is most similar to Wake.
Mhm.
Um, I know I also like I think if I didn't go here, I probably would have gone to Bucknell. So I feel like just like trying to like find the values that if you like in one school a lot, like trying to find them maybe in a different school.
Mhm. Figuring out what it is that you like about that school and what other
Yeah.
schools might have that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was a similar story for me because I also ED'd to my school, and like I felt that like all of the qualities that made Lehigh like Lehigh, I I liked and I wanted to find that in like other schools. So like looking at other schools that were relatively the same size, had like a similar academic selection for majors and like a relatively similar like student life environment was pretty important for me.
Mhm. And do you have any final advice for people, either when it comes to, any disappointment with the application process or kind of positive feelings after having gone through it?
I feel like rejection like doesn't take away from like any of the hard work you put in. Like it still means so much. And also, um, there's like it really sometimes I feel like is random. Like you don't know like why some person got in over you. Like they could have like had some random thing on their essay that they really liked. Like it doesn't like change who you are as a person or like mean anything that like is anything is wrong with you. And like there are gonna be like just because like you don't get into your first couple schools, there's gonna be schools that like accept you like educational advocates. I feel like does a really good job of like making you apply to the right schools. You're not going to end up with no schools. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to have like other schools that you're going to like on your list. So if you don't, get into one of them, chances are like for the other schools that you apply to, you'll at least get into another one of them. Like Sarah said, like educational advocates does a great job at allowing you to like kind of diversify the colleges, especially in terms of like acceptance ranges, so that like you're not like kind of like stuck if you don't get into like that main school that you really wanted.
Mhm. Um, well, thank you guys so much. I really, really, really appreciate all of your insights and thoughts, and I found it really interesting to hear, and I hope it was helpful for others. I'd like to open it up now to others to ask questions, and you can either unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can send it through to the chat. And we'll take, if there are questions, we'll take them for about 10 minutes, and then we'll sign off. And you guys did do such a good job answering questions that it may be that people don't have any. I'll just ask if people, while people are thinking, um, how um, how long were your college lists originally, like kind of your preliminary college lists, and what did you weed them down to, if you remember?
I th- I know I applied to either 13 or 14. I think it was 13 schools, but it could have been 14. And my list was maybe originally like 18 or I don't know. Honestly, what it was originally, I just know I eventually applied to 13 or 14 schools.
Okay.
Yeah, my list ended up being around I think 14 or 15, but I think I only applied to around like 8 or 9 schools before I was accepted early decision.
Okay. Okay, so we have one question. Did you take college ranking into consideration? So I assume like US News ranking, any other rankings?
I feel like I definitely did. I don't know. I feel like you work so hard in high school, like you want to like know you're going to like a prestigious school. So I feel like I did. Yeah, I feel like I did. Like, does that mean like the like ranking of them like by acceptance rate? Is that what that means?
Yeah, they didn't specify, but I think probably they're thinking of maybe the US News ranking and just kind of the typical ones that you see high on the list.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I took that into consideration, but
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely did as well. I guess I didn't only take that into consideration. I mean, I also took into consideration different rankings like career outcomes. Was a
Mhm.
big one that attracted me to Lehigh in specific, but yeah, I mean, it was still kind of a pretty decently sized factor.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that it might be, yeah, as you say, that it might be kind of a part of one of many considerations that you're thinking about when you're kind of thinking about your whole list and where to apply.
What was like a major factor into deciding your major?
I'm technically like at Wake, you don't decide until second semester sophomore year. So I'm still like kind of undecided, but in high school I really liked history. I just thought it was super interesting. And then I think I was originally planning on just majoring in history and maybe like minoring in something business related. But the business school here, you don't technically don't apply till sophomore year. But I went to like a business interest meeting here and I thought that was really interesting. So I feel like when I came here, my interests definitely changed a little. And yeah, so I feel like it kind of like switches for me. I was also interested in psych when I came here, but I think I'm less interested in that now. But yeah.
For me, it was kind of always like about I guess like I always really liked business, so it was just kind of exploring and kind of like finding out what area of business I really liked the best. Um, and I kind of got into working with like computers, doing like computer science, and just generally looking at like the career outcomes for different fields within the business school. Both like nationally and just at Lehigh. I just found that I really liked the way business analytics kind of like took in like logical thinking using like computers and AI, things like that, just stuff that I found interesting and like balancing out with presenting reports and stuff like that. I don't know. I really like the mix of all those different things.
We have another question here. Did either of you do any summer program hosted by university?
I didn't do any.
I did a summer program at Syracuse for 2 weeks. It's a pre-college summer program. I did going into my senior year. I did it for cybersecurity. I thought it was a really great experience actually. It actually for me it gave me a pretty good sense of what it was like living in like a dorm. Just like all of like the other parts of college life that's like separate from academics. It kind of like it got me used to it, I guess.
Mhm. Did it help you? Was that part of what helped you kind of, did that play into your major decision at all? Or
Sort of. Like there was overlapping areas where cybersecurity and business analytics would be like similar, but I guess it was more so it like allowed me to explore, I guess like the type of environment that that major would have. Cybersecurity is like relatively similar to business analytics, so I got to see like what that learning style would be like in those type of classes.
Mhm. And we have another question. This is asked with a smile. For your essays, do you have any hooks? Or I guess and another way to ask it, how did you each draw readers in with your essays?
I kind of said this earlier, but I feel like just like I think like honestly most of my supplemental essays, I just had like a little like personal story at the beginning that related to the question.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, kind of just like a little story at the beginning. They were all like very different.
Mhm.
I can't really think of a specific one, but
And what
Or
about for your main Common App personal essay?
oh, for my main Common App, I'm no, I like since my Common App was about like my interest in history, I started like it was like I started it when I was like younger at my like grandparents' house and like noticing something about like something historical, I think, and then like I kind of like wrote about like how it progressed over time and like growing up in a historic town and like weaved it in with like the internship I did. So I think I
Mhm.
just started like at like a memory when I was younger.
Okay. And what about you, Henry?
For me, it was like I had at the start of my Common App essay, I had like a pretty uh like eye-catching hook. I guess it was just sort of the nature of my story because I my my story was about me saving someone as a lifeguard. So like having kind of that eye-catching hook or like that sort of intensive I guess like couple sentences that brings the reader into the story for me at least was sort of important. And so that's why I added it.
Mhm. And then the rest of the essay, it grew from there, or that story enabled you to talk about kind of qualities in yourself, or
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
that may be it for questions. Anyone?
I have a
Oh,
question, sorry.
okay.
How important do you think extracurriculars and awards are?
I think like they value like um the more I'm trying to think of like the word like they value more um like how much you put into extracurriculars, like if you do something for like 4 years and like how long you do it rather than just having like random ones you do here and there. So I think it's like more important to do ones that like possibly like connect to like something else in your application, like an essay or something, and that are like meaningful to you rather than just having like a ton of them. And like awards, I feel like they're like good to have, obviously. I forget even how many awards you're allowed to put, but like I don't know, I feel like those can only like help you.
Yeah, I thought I would say like if you're able to relate like your experiences to like how or like your extracurricular curricular activities to like how you've changed as a person or as a student in high school, that's pretty important. But like Sarah said, like the amount of time you put into them, and just like how long you stuck with them is like also a pretty big factor in what they're looking for.
Any other questions? Sarah and Henry, any last thoughts to leave the audience with?
Um, just don't let it like consume your life. It'll all be fine.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like put as much effort as you can into this work. You know, like it's important, and it'll definitely reward you if you know put in the work, I guess.
Well, thank you both so much. I really, really appreciate your time, and even more than that, your insights. I think they were so helpful, and I learned things too, even though I work with students all the time. So thank you. And I hope everyone has a great night.